Dear friends, greetings from Lviv, Ukraine. Just a brief, very brief introduction. This seminar is part of a larger program of methodological theological seminars launched almost 10 years ago. And today we have a 35 seminar. The aim of those seminars was to help aspiring young theologians, PhD students to develop their theological research and culture of working with theological knowledge. But last few years, we focus mainly on the themes that are related to current reality of Central Eastern Europe and specifically Ukraine. So this year, we talk about public theology and its role in overcoming totalitarian past. During the previous seminar, we talked about how different Christian churches experienced totalitarian regimes in their countries in basically Soviet period. And today we would like to make a next step and to talk and to think about our present and how Christian churches, evangelical specifically churches, can contribute to build a better democratic future and sustainable, resilient democratic societies. And our first speaker today is dear friend David Kovačević, a Croatian theologian and church deacon. David earned a bachelor's and master's degree in theology from the Evangelical Theological Seminary in Osijek, Croatia. And then he earned his doctorate with Gordon-Conwell Theological Seminary in 2023 with the thesis Theological and Ecclesial Challenges to Croatian Populist Nationalism. And now Lenhem Publishing is considering his dissertation for publishing as part of our Lenhem academic series. David is also the founder of the Stand Up and Walk Ministry for the Social and Marginalized in the city of Zagreb. And currently he also serves as a lecturer and dean of students at Evangelical Theological Seminary in Osijek. David and his wife Arnela have been married for 4 years and have 2 children. And today David will share with us on the topic political populism as a threat to democracy, the church aspect. So David, thank you for joining to us today, and now the floor is yours.
Thank you all for your time, and it's really a privilege for me to be with all of you. As you already heard from Roman and Ksenia and other organizers, I am first of all husband, father, deacon, and a lecturer. So I'm glad to be with you and to share actually with you some parts of my doctoral research. And in the beginning, let me just say a few words and direction about my presentation today. As Roman said, our title is Political Populism as a Threat to Democracy, the Church Perspective. So what I will do in my presentation, I will present to you the case of Croatia, that the Croatian Populist Nationalism that occurred in 1990s. And my focus will be especially the reactions of religious leaders in Croatia concerning a rise of this issue. So briefly just about outline of my presentation today, so that it will be easier for you to follow. So I will say just briefly about Croatian context, where I'm coming from, And by saying that, I'm sending you greetings from Osijek, from Evangelical Theological Seminary, and our dean, Dr. Dalibor Kraljic. So I will say a little bit about Croatian context. Then I will present Croatian political populism. I will try to describe what I mean by it, and actually the history of its arrival in 1990s. Then I will share with you the reaction of religious voices to it. And then on the end, I'm hoping also to share with you some advices from these voices, how to deal with a populist nationalism. And of course, I'm hoping that we will have time in the end to have discussion. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, where you will in this image see where Croatia is geographically located. So it is located in the southern part of the Central Europe and the northern part of the Mediterranean. Croatia became the 28th member of the European Union on the 1st of July 2013. Evangelical Christians in Croatia are a religious minority, which according to the last official census make only 0.32%. The dominant religious community is Roman Catholic Church, which makes 83%. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And I will start to speak about the political populism. Political populism is, of course, the global phenomena. And as I just said in this lecture, I will look at it from the Croatian context. I will try to present the case from early 90s in Croatia, with intention to understand how it can affect the mission of the church. Of course, as evangelical Christian, I'm interested in evangelical perspective on this problem. Okay, why is populist nationalism a challenge? Populist nationalism, it combines a political populism, or what we will popularly call the will of the people, with nationalism, and especially with the nationalism that emphasize the interests and identity of one nation. Populist nationalism is often exclusive and often directed against those that are different. It manifests itself in politicians' attempt to win over the people for their own goals, usually by opposing other individuals, political programs, but also nations or other ethnic groups. Okay, now I will try to describe Croatian political populism in the 1990s. As you can see on your slide, here is a figure which was significant in this process in Croatia. So in our slide, we see Dr. Franjo Tuđman, who was the visionary of new nationalism in Croatia during the 1990s. So he was the first president of the Republic of Croatia after the break of the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. The time frame within which this issue developed is the beginning of the Republic of Croatia as an independent and sovereign state in 1991, after its withdrawal from Yugoslavia. That was the period in which Croatia moved from communist to a democratic political system, also went through a terrible war, and, as I just said, was led by Tudjman until his death in 1998. So in August 1990s, the Serbian Democratic Party in Croatia, with the support of Yugoslav People's Army, organized inside of Croatia so-called SAO Krajina as an autonomous unit in Croatia, and started a rebellion against the new Croatian government. In August of 1990, Serbs attacked police stations in the area where they were the majority, and that was how the armed conflict began. When the Croatian parliament proclaimed the act of separation from Yugoslavia, the Yugoslav People Army tried to prevent it by using armed force. During that process, the cities like Vukovar and Dubrovnik in Croatia were attacked. Vukovar was largely destroyed and conquered, and Dubrovnik was shelled and remained surrounded. Since the beginning of 1992, Croatia has experienced gradual international recognition, and from May 22 of the same year, it became a member of the United Nations. In my recommendations for a reading, and I hope that they came to you, I listed following author, Alex Bellamy, who was dealing with the formation of Croatian national identity in that period. Now, for the sake of time, I will now bring the six of his theses, or six problems that he recognized that are related to Tudjman's political program and vision of the Croatian state and identity. So these are as follows, and I think we can change the slide now. Let's change also another slide. Yeah, okay. These are six problems that Bellamy recognized. So the first one is to unite all Croats as a victim of the Serbian conspiracy. The second is the claim that the NDH, what was the Croatian pro-fascist state during the Second World War, was a legitimate expression of desire of Croatian nation for Croatian statehood. Number three is unification with the Croatian emigration. And here, this emigration was actually one that escaped after the fall of this pro-fascist state. Number four is Croatian sovereignty and independency. Number five is specific approach to the citizenship. And number six is the promotion of clericalism. Basically, the Bellamy's criticism of Tudjman is his inclination toward the right-wing conservative spectrum of Croatian society during that period. He criticized Tudjman for that because Tudjman had also another options. Namely, Tudjman tried to unite Croats by setting them against others, Serbs in this case, because according to him, Croats differ from the Serbs in the terms of culture, history, and geography. Just in short, to share Croats and Serbs and their differences. Actually, they are two very similar people group or nations, two Slavic nation groups who have very similar language, However, Croats are predominantly Roman Catholic, while the Serbs are predominantly Eastern Orthodox. These two people group or nations lived in one country of Yugoslavia for almost whole 20th century. This is just a background, short background about these two nations. So further on, Tudjman insisted that NDH, or this pro-fascist state from the Second World War, was, as I already said, the expression of desire of the Croatian people for an independent state. So that desire was legitimate, according to him. Even what emerged from it was wrong. As I mentioned also, Tudjman had exclusive approach to citizenship in Croatia. Bellamy believes that the Croatian government in that period promulgated a law on the citizenship of the Republic of Croatia that could be interpreted in two ways, depending on whether the person was Croat or Serb. And in that way, it discriminated citizens of the Serbian origin. Also, Tudjman intended to use religion, specifically the Roman Catholic Church, as a means of unity of all Croats, as opposed to the Serbs who were predominantly Orthodox. For him, the Roman Catholic Church was an important identity marker in creating a new Croatian democratic state. So, according to him, if you are Catholic, then you are a real Croat. Of course, this was a challenge for those of us who had been evangelical Christians, but still felt to be Croats, yet we had not been Roman Catholics. Okay, so that was a little bit about the context of Croatian populist nationalism during early 1990s. Now, if we can go to the next slide, we can go further on. Here I'm listing some voices, religious voices, both from Roman Catholic side and evangelical, that challenged the populist nationalism during the 1990s. The first figure that you can see is on the slide is a Cardinal Franjo Kuharić, who was the leader of the Roman Catholic Church during that period. The Pope John Paul II ordained him as a cardinal in the 1983. The next figure is the Bishop Antun Škvorčević. He is significant because of his ecumenical activities and relations with the Serbian Orthodox Church during that period. He was a member of the Croatian Episcopal Commission for Dialogue with the Serbian Orthodox Church. And the last name, priest Živko Kustić, he was director in that period of Informative Catholic Agency. So he was writing a lot about discriminatory tendencies and activities during that period. As some evangelical voices that I'm listing here, the first one is Dr. Peter Kuzmić, who was the founder of our school here in Osijek. He was a leader of evangelical movement in Croatia during that period. From 1991 to 2000, he served as the president of Evangelical Alliance in Croatia. During that period, he had direct correspondence and personal contact with the Tudjman. Another figure that I'm listing here is Dr. Miroslav Volf. He is evangelical leader who theologically considered and wrote on Christian faith and nationalism during that period. He is well known for his book, Exclusion and Embrace, a theological exploration of identity, otherness, and reconciliation. His work is significant because Wolff, in his work, consider how we as Christians might uphold the message of Jesus Christ and his cross in the face of injustice, violence, and prejudice against those who are different than us. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, where I will be starting to list some challenges of these figures toward Tudjman idea of formation of Croatian state in early 90s. Actually, I will list the common voice that challenge it. One commonality that I find out both in Roman Catholic and Evangelical side, first of all, goes to the documents of these two bodies. In the Second Vatican Council, or the documents, specifically a dogmatic constitution on the Church, or Lumen Gentium, on the one side, and on the other side, in a Cape Town commitment, in the chapter Building the Peace of Christ in a Divided and Broken World, one commonality that we find there is that both documents understand Christ as the one in whom the problem of animosity that exists among the nations is addressed. Okay, we can go to the other slide. Now I go to the specific topics. So both ecclesial bodies promoted, first of all, separation between the church and politics. Wolff saw the danger in close relations between the church and politics because the church could turn from a factor of peace into generator of conflict. According to Wolff, the reason why the church becomes a generator of conflict is that it is more identified with political power than with its theological essence, which will be the Christ. The reason, according to Wolff, why the religion goes in this direction is because it is dissatisfied with its status in the society as a witness of the truth, and it wants to use political power to impose its truth on whole society. Further on, or the second commonality, is that they stressed dignity, freedom, and human rights for every individual. Kuzmic pointed to immature transition processes in which, instead of change from communism to democracy, freedom, and human rights for every individual human being, we experienced a change from a totalitarian to a narrow tribal mentality, and thus brought into the question democratic processes and human rights, especially of vulnerable minorities. Wolff elaborated the idea of solidarity with the weaker, but also called for the solidarity with the enemy. Christian action in the world toward the other should reflect God's openness for us on the cross as sinners, says Wolff, because as the scripture says in Romans 5:8, God loved us while we were still his enemies. The third commonality is the attitude of those leaders toward military actions in the time of war. Cardinal Kuharić's position was in accordance with the teaching of the Church, or more precisely, in accordance with the teaching of the Vatican II, Pastoral Constitution Gaudium et Spes, and its attitude toward military operations. He taught that the fight for a freedom and peace is justified, that it is a right and a duty, but it must never come at the expense of the other. It must go within the framework of the rule of a law. On the other side, Kuzmić understood military operations of the Croatian army in liberating Croatian territories from Serbian occupation. So he believed that those actions were justified. However, he believed the Croatian government was responsible for respecting human rights for all citizens and in promoting and building a peace. The last point here is that they advocated for factors that unite rather than those that divide. So Bishop Škvorčević and priest Živko Kustić highlighted the similarities between the Croats and Serbs, which was a direct challenge to Tuđman's thesis on the non-bridgeable differences between the two nations. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So now I go to the current religious leaders and their attitude toward the Croatian populist nationalism in early 90s and the commonalities that I find there. So the first is that they recognize the problem in identifying religious and national identity. Roman Catholic authors see this as a problem because it goes against the nature of Roman Catholic theology of universality of the church. While evangelical see that as such a mentality as a barrier to a healthy approach to evangelization. The next point that I listed is that populist nationalism was often used for achieving economic and material gain. For example, the priest Ivica Jagodić described the insincerity of some politicians who took off their communist shirts and put on quasi-democratic ones, with the aim of opportunism and economic gain. Next one is that populist nationalism frequently strengthens the identity of one nation while pitting it against other. Bellamy, the author that I mentioned, claimed that in the early 1990s, Serbs in Croatia were treated as second-class citizens. He said that this became visible through the specific law on citizenship. Although the Constitution of the Republic of Croatia generally guaranteed national rights to all minorities, this specific law was used to challenge certain Serbs' right to citizenship in Croatia. Next common voice is that populist nationalism often flirted with nationalist right. Another priest during this period, Josip Ranković, says that due to the earlier suppression of national feeling, when he say earlier, he means on the period of communism, in this new period, during the 1990s, there were extreme revival of an ideology that historically did not bring anything good. He here thinks about Nazi ideology. Another theologian, Matulić, calls such tendencies as evil aspects or evil spirits of popular nationalism. Okay, next slide, please. And this will be our last slide, which is basically a guideline for dealing, or not guideline, the better word here is recommendation, which I also draw from these authors on how to deal. So when I say these authors, I mean on the current leaders, both from Roman Catholic and evangelical background, on how to deal with the populist nationalism. So the first thing that they say, number one, is that the church should speak prophetically to the society. Theologian Matulić, that I already mentioned, emphasize that in relation to popular nationalism and society in general, the church should speak prophetically. However, he noticed that the church often, especially church leadership, is compromised and not in a position to be a prophetic voice because it is well cared by the same society. Therefore, for church to speak prophetically to the society, Wolff warns, church must not identify itself with any political project in the same society. Another theologian, our current dean, that Dalibor Kraljic, he warns that the church must be a corrective to any ideological extreme. He says that the mission of the church in this respect is to be a challenge to a popular nationalism. So it must not allow it to become a challenge to the church. Number two is that the church should preach the word of God faithfully. Where the gospel is preached faithfully, darkness is revealed, says theologian Budiselić. Its light brings clarity and reveals darkness and animosity toward the other in the popular nationalism. A person that turns to Christ will also turn from its hatred toward other around him. Number three is that the church should emphasize dignity, rights, and freedom of every human person. The theme of pluralization of Croatian society, with an emphasis on building a society of dignity for every human person, where people and ideas can compete with the power of arguments, not force, was Kuzmić's emphasis. He shared these thoughts during his meeting directly with Tudjman in 1996. It was in this area that Kuzmić saw the role of small but vibrant evangelical community as a bridge between Croatia and Western society, where human rights and freedoms are respected. Number four, the church needs to witness society by nurturing multi-ethnic Christian communities. Pastor Ico Matulić says that the church should gather people from different nationalities into the same communities and thus practically live a life of reconciliation, acceptance, brotherhood, respect, and removal of obstacles for coexistence. He believes that this is the case in many evangelical communities of faith in Croatia. Number five is that the church should promote a healthy relationship between religion and politics. Wolff, that we mentioned, pointed out that the politics and religion are equally tempted to identify with each other because they see in the other the possibility of achieving their goals. Not only politicians see the benefit in identifying with religion. Religious leaders often see the same. According to Wolff, they do this when they are not satisfied, as we mentioned, with their status in society. Wolff further asks, how then should religion be positioned in the relation to politics? He sees a difference between the identification of religion with a particular political option and public involvement in society. According to him, religion should avoid any identification with the political program, but should be publicly present. Number six is that the church ought to emphasize factors that unite people rather than those that divide them. So the church responsibility is to continually draw attention to the commonalities among people, which may be found in the fact that we are all made in the image of God, or Imago Dei. Number seven says that the church should engage in social dialogue that promotes inclusive identity markers. Here, I will bring one biblical paradigm from the book of Nehemiah, Ezra, and Nehemiah. Particularly in Nehemiah 12:44 to 13:1-3, we read about establishing the limits for Jewish community that returned from Babylonian captivity in order to preserve a community's identity. The passage after that one in Nehemiah 13:4-31 is about the leaders as Zerubbabel, Ezra, and Nehemiah, and their failure in reviving the Jewish community. So the lesson that we can draw from Ezra and Nehemiah's book is that while it is normal to set some boundaries that help shape a society as a country, as country develops its identity, it is unjustifiable when these boundaries are constructed in a way that exclude others. So we can recall that in the book of Ezra, newly returned Jewish community rejected help from people that had already lived in their land. So the role of the church is to participate in social discourse about finding innovative ways to support identity markers that reaffirm a particular community, but in a way that it does not put them in opposition to other cultures, people group, and etc. Okay, and the last point here that we have in a slide goes in accordance with the church documents that I mentioned in the beginning, and it says that the church should promote peace through the cross of Christ. Christian communities should be dedicated to foster Christ's peace as they deal with various types of extremism. Wolf outlined the prerequisites that must be satisfied in order to create that kind of peace. In his work, Exclusion and Embrace, he made the argument that mercy and embrace cannot be genuine and lasting if justice and truth are not revealed and upheld. So this is the end of the quote from Wolf. And this is the end of my presentation. So thank you all for your patience and attentions. And now I believe follows a more interesting part. So I'm open for discussion and for questions that you should have or any clarifications that maybe are there.
Thank you, David. We have a question from Radoslav that soon. I'm not sure if Radoslav is still here, but question is posed. He asks, what does it mean in practice, in practical terms, to speak prophetically to society in the context of your research? Thank you. So what would be the practical steps of prophetic speech?
Thank you for this question. If you can recall, one of the authors that I listed was pastor that recommended church to build multi-ethnic communities of faith. So my opinion is not just opinion, but this is my experience. Because I personally live in the city of Vukovar that was destroyed by the Serbian army, totally destroyed. And to make my answer short, the witness to our city is that in our church community, So we have together Croats and Serbs worshiping the same God. So, you know, it's interesting when we read a scripture that sometimes a prophetic voice actually does not come by voice. It comes by action. For example, when Jesus is cleansing the temple in the Gospel of Matthew, for example, so Jesus is not speaking anything, but but through his action, through his symbolic action, he is speaking about the state of Jewish community in that time. So my answer and advice how to speak prophetically. So we need to live with those that are different than we are. And I think that especially we as evangelicals have potential to show that example, because we are not necessarily nationally colored. So I hope that this answer is helpful.
Oh, thank you, David. I have another question from Ksenia Trofimchuk. She mentions that that when you was describing Catholic position, Catholic teaching and practice during the war, it was based on the teaching of Vatican II Pastoral Constitution.
Yes.
And its attitude toward military operations.
Yeah.
I guess the problem of evangelicals and Pentecostals or Baptists was actually the absence of such foundational texts that would provide orientation of their social public stance toward the political and social challenges. So what was the foundation for developing public theology by Croatian evangelicals?
This is a nice notice. Yes, I mentioned that the Cardinal Kuharić formed his public statement on Croatian military operations, which had been oriented toward freeing the occupied territory by Serbian army. So he quoted his stand. I mean, he shared his statement by quoting Pastoral Constitution Gaudium et Spes. Unfortunately, from evangelical side, as I don't know, is he or she noticed that we don't have such a document. I mean, we have a general stand, and also I quoted the Cape Town Commitment, which generally gives advice that we as evangelicals should promote peace of Christ. You know, so it's hard to have a clear statement and position, especially in a time of war, when we don't have something to hold on. Of course, we always have a Bible and biblical text. However, if I can also point you to also my quote from Wolf, when he speaks about the reality the church should promote peace through the cross of Christ. If you notice, in his book Exclusion and Embrace, Wolf says that he shares argument that we should show mercy and embrace toward the enemy. However, for a peace to be genuine and last, for peace to last, the justice and truth needs to be revealed and uphold. So I just want to quote him as a help here, because I think he gives a good guideline how our promotion of peace should look like. So going back to the prophetical action in living with the other, whoever he can be, so we can prophetically act. However, on the other side, we need to promote justice and truth about what really happened or is happening on the ground. So, I mean, at least this is the claim of Miroslav Volf, that in that way, when when we say justice, so what that means. I mean, this is the pact word, which basically what he is saying is that all that committed crimes during the war need to be brought to the justice, at least our eternal, our earthly courts. And on the other side, we need to promote truth about what is happening.
Yeah. Thank you, David. I wonder how popular or how accepted Wolf's ideas were among Croatian evangelicals back in 90s.
Yeah. In a general, I cannot. I mean, I can say that Wolf was popular in a sense that he was present in a public sphere in a way that he was in the period of 90s. We know that still we didn't have internet, so he was present on a TV together with the Dr. Kuzmic, trying to speak in a public sphere and share his ideas. But on the other side, if I can express my sadness, I think that his thesis didn't find a significant root. And what I mean by that is, that I don't know what is the reason. Maybe because Wolf is not living anymore in Croatia. He's not in Croatia. He's United States. Maybe if he will be more visible here, again, he will be more recognized here. But I mean, generally speaking, his ideas had been spoke in a public realm, but my perception is that they didn't get more power or more root, even in theological thinking. I mean, I personally didn't find a lot of, for example, articles of Croatian theologians, either Catholics or evangelical, that had been dealing more with his ideas.
Yeah, thank you, Franz. We still have 6 more minutes before break. So there are many renowned theologians here participating in this seminar. You are welcome even to raise your hand. Here's a question from Valentina Nemerzhitska. Valentina, please, if you are with us, could you please speak out your question? You speak perfect English, better than I do.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Sorry, it's 5 in the morning in Mexico. Thank you for your class. I was wondering, it's rather a practical question on the point of the church should emphasize factors that unite people rather than those that divide them. So how do you find the balance without, because okay, we say let's focus on Christ, on his accomplishment, on his work. And as soon as we start then calling upon the responsibility of people in the period of war, you know, just we cannot, we can either pretend peace without identifying evil as evil, wrong as wrong, without calling to repentance, or if we ignore that, then we are not true to the gospel. So how do you find the balance without causing unnecessary division, but at the same time realizing that division will happen as soon as you are truthful to the gospel? I don't know if it makes sense the way,
Thank you. This is very important question. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but you know, I think we need to start with the biblical ground, you know, and what we where to start. We need to start with the human commonalities that we as humans are sharing. You know, the Bible is clear there that we are all created in the image of God. So what that means? That means that, you know, we all have a common origin, despite of our differences. Now, you know, not when any conflict arrives or is happening, you know, first of all, even in our enemy, we need to see the common human, you know. I can now bring some practical examples because you know, me and my family here in Croatia, we experienced war. That was one of motivation why I went into this topic. You know, for example, I was a small boy when the war started, so I had 6-7 years. I have memory from that period, but also I recall the stories of my father. My father, who was a pastor in one town, and he has many stories, practical stories. For example, I will be as short as I can. When, for example, Croatian soldiers captive the Serbian one, and for example, they had been ready to kill him, but some of them called for my father because, you know, he was a spiritual authority in that town, and they asked him, "What shall we do?" And my father said to these soldiers, you know, he said to them, "But you are believers. You know, I see that you have rosaries on your shoulders." And they said, "Yeah, we are believers." So he asked them, "Who is the giver of life?" They said, "God is giver of life." Then he said, you know, "Okay, who is God among you? Let him took his life." You know, and what they say, "No, we cannot do that." And then they asked him, "What shall we do then?" And my father said, make exchange. You know that our soldiers are also captured at the Serbian side. So let us make exchange. They say, "Oh, this is a great idea, but who will go to the Serbian side?" And then my father said, "I will go." You know, and the rest, you know, the rest is the history. I don't want to take a lot of time. So, you know, such a situations, you know, it's you know, as I said, we experience war here. The war is hypnosis. It's really hard to react in the particular situations in which you are found. And really, the story that I shared now, the true story, I cannot look to it in other way than to recognize the direct guidance of the Spirit of God, you know, who was leading and giving the wisdom to my father what to do in particular moment. And from here, I just want to conclude again, as you said, how to be fair to the gospel. Again, I will point to the wolf, because I think that he is trying to still to keep balance, balance between showing mercy to the enemy. So we are called as Christians to show mercy. However, we are not called to compromise with the truth and the justice. Now to find balance between these two is now it depends. I'm now speaking from a distance. The war in Croatia happened before more than 25 years. I'm now speaking from the distance, and it's different when you speak from the distance than when it is happening. But so I know that we are 1 minute after one, so I will close here.
Yeah, thank you, David. It is important conversation. That I'm visiting Croatia quite often, and I understand that Lord's willing, if we will survive this war, we will come to this conversation in our country sometime in the future. But for now, you are totally right. We are in the midst of war of attrition, existential war of survival of our country and nation. And it's really difficult for us to find the balance of those extremes that you was talking, balance between peace and mercy from one side and justice and truth on other side. And it's really difficult to make such choices like after almost every night our country is attacked by dozens of Russian drones like this last night in Kyiv and many other places. So I really appreciate the experience and knowledge and the path that my Croatian friends went through. And I really hope that we will continue this conversation and we will learn your lessons and we will maintain meaningful dialogue with your heritage and with your practice of life during the war and after the war.